I came to discover all these huge heritage along the road into making wine. And this can be summed up in a nutshell with four factors: the altitude, the sunshine, the Mediterranean, and the quality of the soil. So it's wonderful to grow grapes in Lebanon.
Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Listen in as we journey to some of Italy's most beautiful places in the company of those who know them best, the families who grow grapes and make fabulous wines. Through their stories, we will learn not just about their wines, but also about their ways of life, the local and regional foods and specialities that pair naturally with their wines, and the most beautiful places to visit. We have a wonderful journey of discovery ahead of us, and I hope you will join me. Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Today we travel not to Italy, but to Lebanon's Beqaa Valley, one of the oldest and most historic wine regions in the world, to meet my guest, Sami Ghosn of the Massaya Winery, who will share his fascinating and courageous story with us. Good morning, Sami. We met last month at Dart's Farm, Topsham, when you hosted a quite fabulous and fascinating wine dinner. So I'm really delighted to be able to further our conversation and to share your story and the story of Massaya Wines with our listeners who are located all around the world. How are you today? And where are you right now?
Good morning, Mark, and thank you for hosting me. I just flew in to London from Washington, D.C. last night, so I'm in London, not far from you, I guess.
Okay, so this has been a period of time outside of your country, outside of the events that are happening, of course, but also meeting customers all around the world. You travel quite a lot, don't you?
Yes, quite extensively, and this is actually all was pre-scheduled to the current situation in our part of the world. So I don't like to change my schedule due to unforeseen circumstances we have no say about nor power about.
Of course. Now, Sami, many today might not immediately think of Lebanon as one of the most historic wine producing countries in the world. But there's a history and a tradition of winemaking and wine commerce that goes back thousands of years to the Phoenicians, great seafaring, trading people who spread the culture of wine all across Europe and even beyond. Can you tell us about the Phoenicians, please, and something about this amazing civilization?
Indeed, the Phoenicians actually were not only traders, but they were viticulturists. So wherever they set foot to trade, they planted vines. And when you plant vines, you settle. That's why they had all those comptoirs, we call them, around the Mediterranean basin, and you say beyond Sicily, Marseille, North Africa, all the way to Spain, Portugal. I was actually recently in Cornwall in the southwest of the UK, talking in front of customers, and the gentleman farmer that owned the land there said they were digging, they found Phoenician artcraft. They used to sail all the way to Cornwall for the tin, and it was always a quality produce they brought to the world all the way from Asia, from the caravan, from the Silk Routes, and took it to the rest of the world. And certainly wine in amphora, called, it was used to be named Biblin. It came from Byblos, north of Beirut. It was considered the Grand Cru, the quality wine at the time, and they were renowned for their quality of their wine. Of course, the Phoenicians, you can say, were the first people to trade with wine. They brought in the wine to the pharaohs of Egypt and to the Greeks, and it was always quality produce along those lines, the wine. So the first, recently it was proven that the first crossing of what became the Vitis vinifera emanated from the Levant, the heart of which is Lebanon and Phoenicia. So this is about 8,000 years ago. The two species that came about around the same period, one in the Levant and the other one around Georgia. We thought originally it came down from Georgia through Mesopotamia towards modern day Lebanon, but actually those species never crossed, and DNA has proven that they were distinct. So you can say that Lebanon is pretty much where grapes came about to life and winemaking started there on.
That's an amazing story. Actually, I didn't know that about the crossing of the wild vines with the Vitis vinifera, or this crossing to create the European grapevine, which is now planted all across the world. So that is a very important fact of Lebanon's long and lengthy tradition. The Romans were in your area too. You described this beautiful, really impressive temple to Bacchus at Baalbek. Isn't this where your vineyards are situated?
Yes, indeed. The Romans came about later, but the Romans took at the time the winemaking to an industrial scale. Wherever the Romans set foot, they produced wine, all the way from Asia to Scotland. So they built not in Rioja nor Tuscany nor Bordeaux, but their temple for Bacchus, their god of grapes and wine, in Baalbek, in the Beqaa Valley, the city of the god Baal. And Baalbek is where there stands the magnificent, it's the best preserved Roman temple in the world, actually. And it's quite impressive. I must have been visited the Roman temple of Bacchus more than 10 times, and every time I'm there, it's just incredible. The feeling. They give music concerts out there, and the sound is immaculate despite the hugeness of the stone that are positioned and the columns, and it's quite impressive. And we discovered one thing, the closer we got to this temple of Bacchus with our vines and vineyards, as we developed Messiah, the better quality of the grapes and the wines. It's magic.
Well, that's amazing. Again, this length, deep roots of viticulture where you're growing grapes today. In the Bible, Jesus performed his first miracle at Cana of Galilee, transforming water into wine. That's in southern Lebanon, is that right?
Indeed, indeed. And this is for the first miracle of Christ. And actually, Lebanon is the only wine region mentioned in the Bible, the Old Testament. There is no other wine region mentioned in the holy books than Lebanon. This tells you the magnitude and the deep rooted heritage of wine. It's part of our DNA in Lebanon. So honestly, I did not realize all that before starting Messiah. The venture and adventure of Messiah came about by accident almost, by my attachment to Lebanon and the roots of our ancestry. And I came to discover all these huge heritage and signs of nature towards wine from our part of the world, and the Phoenicians and the Levant and the mountains, and along the road into making wine. And this can be summed up in a nutshell with four factors: the altitude, the sunshine, the Mediterranean, and the quality of the soil. So it's wonderful to grow grapes in Lebanon.
You can see why these were wines that were considered the Grand Cru of the ancient world and producing great wines again today. Lebanon, of course, is going through troubled times now, but it's a country not just rich in the culture of wine, but such a rich and multi-layered history over the centuries. And Beirut was, by all accounts, one of the most beautiful cities, a place of culture and sophistication. Is that how you remember it prior to the Civil War?
I still live it as such now.
Hmm.
It might sound, difficult to you seeing what you see through the news, but Beirut is very vibrant. It's magnificent.
Yeah.
It has a soul. The first time I landed, I remember in New York, I felt as if I'm in Beirut. It has this vibe that you cannot explain. It's over Beirut, it's overwhelming.
Uh-huh.
It's not beautiful in design, it's beautiful by soul. It's one of those places you land and you feel that it cannot leave you untouched. You might hate it, but you cannot be indifferent to Beirut.
Uh-huh. Now, Sami, the Civil War that lasted from 1975 to 1990 had a profound effect on your life.
Mhm.
Tell us what happened.
Actually, in 73, the trouble started with the Palestinians at the time that were armed in Lebanon and were becoming overpowering the state. And people are usually peaceful in Lebanon. And remember, Phoenicians never traded by wars or never had an army. It was always trade and exchange and numbers and culture. So that took us off guard. My grandmother, with my uncle in her car, was shot dead by a Palestinian sniper, and it was the first shock. My mom going to hospital to give blood, and then in '75 we got displaced from our town, and we were rushed to the Beqaa Valley where my parents had farmland, thinking it would be more peaceful there, and the war and the troubles with the Palestinians caught up with us in the Beqaa, and we got displaced again. We're Christian Maronites, and we had issues, at the time with the Palestinians, and the Muslims in Lebanon had embraced the Palestinian cause, the big struggle between the Palestinians, Israel. So we were caught in between the fires, and that had definitely an impact on us. I remember the last day leaving our property in the Beqaa, my brother and I rushed into my mom's white Volvo. At the time, we had our faces against the back shield of the car because our German Shepherd was went through the barbed wire and was chasing the car. And unusually, because dogs, animals feel tension, and clearly there was tension which our parents were trying to hide from us. And we realized, I said, Mom, stop the car, let's take Tigra with us. We will take her with us. And then she said, we'll be back next weekend. It wasn't until 17 years later that I came back to the property. Eventually, they shot the dog, took over our land, and occupied it for 17 years. I came back in the early 90s, 1992, after growing up in France, studying, and then working in the US to reclaim our land. I was really moved in the US when the Syrians at the time in 1990 invaded what was left free of Lebanon, looted, and so it was very disturbing times, but Lebanon never really left me. I studied in France and worked in the US, but I was very much attached to our homeland as I am still because those memories did not leave me. The peacefulness of Lebanon in a way, the multicultural, the how we grew in the land, the sense of the land could not dissipate from me. I might have left physically, but emotionally I was still very much rooted in our memories, in the mountains of Lebanon, in the Beqaa, and that is what I guess initiated my work and my passion for Lebanon that unfortunately has not seen much peacefulness despite all our eagerness for this peace in the last 40 plus years.
Thank you for sharing that personal story of what you and your family have had to go through, Sami. You returned to the Bekaa Valley, you reclaimed your land. You didn't begin immediately to make wine, did you? You were actually doing something else with the grapes.
There is an older gentleman that had transformed into a small piece of land into a piece of paradise next closer to Beirut in the area they call now Dahi, that is being bombarded every day, and he had planted vines, not only vines, almond trees, pomegranates, cactus trees. He grew honey and bees and what have you. So it was really a little piece of paradise close to Beirut. And I said to him, I'd like to transform the land I have in the Bekaa into this. And he would break a couple of eggs. He had some poultry and sip on a white liquid, which I did not really know. I knew it was Arab, but I did not know much more then. And he said, well, my son, why don't you make arak? I said, well, what's arak? He said, we have to source some grapes, which we did, make wine, which we did, and then distill the wine into arak. And we rented a still. His wife would prepare for us cuisine. The world now is familiar with hummus and tabbouleh and baba ghanoush, and it was the first drop of rains on the Bekaa Valley and the smell of the soil. And we were waiting while we were waiting the still overnight, and it really came into my veins, and I realized this is where I am rooted, Phoenician. I did my DNA. I'm 99.98% Levantine Phoenician. So I guess this was the calling, and I realized what Arak was. And yes, I started making couple of produce from grape molasses, and a couple of produce for our terroirs, but arak as well in handcrafted with handcrafted labels in jars, and I started selling those at my parents' pharmacy over on Mount Lebanon in a corner, organic with biodynamic practices, all those words the world is now keen on, because in Lebanon we don't spray the grapes nor we irrigate. At Masaya, we're totally biodynamic, and actually the weather helps you in that sense tremendously. We average about 300 days of sunshine while we have snow-capped mountains and snow on the vines a couple of months of the year. So the grapes are, they don't need sanitization. They're beautifully rich and filled with sun and snow melt water along the year. So the arak I started selling at my parents' pharmacy. People came for more. My dad said, "You must be doing something right here." And this is where I
So arak is something of the national drink of Lebanon, is
Yeah,
that right?
yes, yes, it is. It is common to our area from the Mediterranean. The French have pastis, the Greeks ouzo, the Turks have raki, the Italian sambuca. On the eastern coast, Lebanon, Israel, and this region, arak is the drink, and this is what came about, and it was by default. It's the same origins of all the anise-based flavors in our part of the world, and every region made the alcohol from what it had as fruit, and Lebanon's is grapes, obviously, and even in Jordan, Palestine. They have grapes as well, and this is how arak is recognized as the national drink. But certainly in Lebanon at Massaya, we do it in a traditional way using old copper stills. They're called Moorish lead copper stills. So they're predecessors of the alambic charentais with which cognac is produced.
Okay, well, I had a chance to taste your arak at the evening you hosted last month, and I don't think I was aware of what an important element of Lebanese culture this drink represents to you. And as well, it's where you began your return to Lebanon through the production of arak. But you and your brother Ramzi made a bold decision to grow grapes not just for the production of arak, but to make table wines. Why did you make this decision? What led you to become a winemaker?
Yes, it came organically, as for the rest. I started making the arak and then thought of the blue bottle in remembrance of the Phoenicians, and that was already on track. And I get a call one day from a gentleman, French. In Lebanon, we speak French. There is a lot of French influence in Lebanon. And he says, "My name is Jean-Marie Fressex. Don't you laugh." And we speak French in Lebanon, which meant fresh sex. You could not laugh. And that was before WhatsApp and podcasts for sure. I said, "Yes." I said, "My name is Fressex and I provide corks to the wine industry in Lebanon." He said, "Well, I'm making arak, not wine." He said, "Word is on the street, you're going to be making wine." Because we had started, Ramsey and I, planting grapes at the time. At the time, Ramsey had joined me, and that was already 1997, 1998. And I said, "Well, introduce me to winemakers from France willing to invest with me in a winery in Lebanon. I'll buy corks from you." He said, "Well, I will." And a couple of weeks later, I get a call from Dominique Ebrar. His family owned Cheval Blanc in Bordeaux. I kid you not, Mark. I had no idea what Cheval Blanc was. I knew Bordeaux was famous, but not more than that. And I get to visit Dominique in Saint-Emilion. The first winery he visited was Cheval Blanc, and the rest is history. He loved the idea. Dominique says to me, it would be a dream come true to me to produce wine at the foothills of the temple of Bacchus in the Beqaa Valley. Obviously, he knew much more than I did at the time about the importance of Lebanon and the Phoenicians and the Levant in terms of wine and winemaking. And this is how we came into a partnership. And then we were joined by the Brunier family from Vieux-Télégraphe in Châteauneuf-du-Pape in France. And then my brother Ramzi became the winemaker out of passion and dedication and talent. And Masaya as a winery came about to life. And we have been partners for almost a generation.
That's an amazing story. And that French connection, of course, the French mandate, the French influence in Lebanon, but extending into wine and these relationships with famous, well known producers in Bordeaux and in the Rhone Valley who are producing great wines themselves. So it was a great partnership, I guess. But you and your brother still were learning and doing pretty well everything yourselves. And now you can celebrate 25 years of Messiah. Is that right?
It's 1998, yes, 26, right?
26
Mm,
years. Wow.
mm,
Incredible.
mm.
Well, Sammy, let's discuss your wines. Let's go through a range of wines. The wines I tasted actually with you last month because I think that the range is really interesting. Both the grape varieties, classic French grape varieties, as well as lesser known native Lebanese varieties. I particularly enjoyed the reds, of course, but also this beautiful white wine that we began with. So let's talk about your wines.
In 2014, we inaugurated an altitude winery. Lebanon is home to the highest altitude vineyards of the Northern Hemisphere. This is also an interesting point because very few people associate Lebanon with altitude, while altitude is what compensates for the latitude of Lebanon. Hence, the association of sun, snow, and cool weather that is instrumental to the quality of the grape. And when you're talking quality wine, you're talking quality grape. And this is God gift to nature, I believe, in Lebanon particularly. And this is God gift to nature in the Levant. This is why you have so much history.
How high are the vineyards, Sammy?
We're up to 1700 meters at Massaya with our
Oh my
wines.
goodness,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
That
Literally at the foothills of the ski slopes of Mount Lebanon. So we literally ski. I actually, during the pandemic, I did snowboard between the vines and sent it to a few
oh
friends.
my,
So it's
amazing.
you really can ski where we grow grapes. And we have in 2014 inaugurated an altitude winery over in Faqra on Mount Lebanon. And this is where we produce the white. It has Obeidi, it's a native varietal in it. And we have a second white that is only available at the winery, made by another local grape, indigenous to Lebanon, is what I mean by local. It's called Merweh. And it's a wine we vinify in amphora. So there are a couple of varietals that have survived phylloxera and 500 years of Ottoman ruling, and those were white varietals predominantly thanks to the arak making. Arak, as we mentioned earlier, is the national drink, I would say, of the Levant, and in Lebanon it was widely consumed, and grapes were widely planted. Thanks to the production of arak, we were able to, those grapes survived, if you wish. So this is pretty much what salvaged those varietals that we use in our white wines. In the rosé we had, it's 100% Cinsault. When we say Cinsault in Lebanon, can always claim it's a French varietal. It's true. But at the same time, remember, vines and grapes came from the east of the Mediterranean to the rest of the Old World with the Phoenicians. So Sanso is rooted back to us. It evolves with the wild crossing and the crossing of the different varietals along the routes of evolution. But when you talk French varietals, in Lebanon you would say we have Grenache. You would say Grenache rather than Grenacha, or Mourvèdre rather than Monastrell. But at the same time, those are Eastern Mediterranean varietals originally. So I relay them to the Mediterranean rather to a specific country. It's easier. So the Cinsault were mostly planted when the French, after the Second World War, came back and Lebanon was under French mandate. So lots of the missionaries brought in crafts, especially from Algeria. Algeria was the number one producing country at the time that planted those grapes. And the Sanso we had at Masaya, the rosé is 100% Sanso. And the reds we tasted have predominantly Grenache, Mourvèdre, a bit of Syrah, and we have in our Colombier Tempranillo. The first red we tasted. Phoenicians planted Tempranillo in Spain and Portugal, and we brought back vine cuts from there. And Tempranillo does superbly well in the Beqaa. So it's predominantly Mediterranean varietals that we work with. We have very little oak involved in our production, so no oak casks. We have food, larger oak vats at both wineries. So we did actually taste Rosé from Massaya, the white, the blanc from Altitude, and we did taste the Terrace de Baalbek and the Cap Est that are two single vineyards we have closer to the Temple of Bacchus.
I was really, really impressed by the full range, Sammy. I was impressed by the vibrancy and energy. These are wines that have real energy and vivacity to them in all styles. I'm really interested in what you're saying about varieties in the Mediterranean that originated from the Phoenicians carrying the vines with them. And I know Professor Attilio Scienza, who is Italy's greatest authority on vine genetics, has done a great deal of research into Italian native grape varieties and those that have come mainly on the Tyrrhenian side of Italy through the Phoenician traders, I guess coming up from Motia, the island of Mozia, which was an important colony, and then around to Marseille, and eventually to Cadiz and around the vineyards of Jerez de la Frontera. So these roots can be traced back now genetically by DNA, proving the origins of grape varieties. So that's a fascinating connection. And you're now producing wines that do go back to those earliest roots.
The Phoenicians founded Marseille. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. The Phoenicians founded Marseille as well as Sicily, and believe it or not, my French partner Brunier started making goat cheese, and the best goats, for that purpose, because he has a Paliere property with a lot of very mountainous, with a lot of oak and very hard to access. They were recommended for him are chèvre de Phénicie, and it's a type of goats in France, in southern France, certainly. Chèvre de Phénicie, the goats of Phoenicia. So,
Oh,
yeah, even goats were transported, I guess, with the Phoenicians to Marseille. And yeah, the connection is huge. And in Italy, at the shores, there are mountains of amphora broken, they used to ship olive oil, wine, all in amphora, spices, and so forth. That was the bottle of the time, or the recipient. So there are shores like filled of amphoras, breakage, residues, whatever.
sure,
Mm,
sure. Some of those amphor, of course, are stained with that deep purple. The Phoenicians had that expertise in extracting the purple dye from the murex,
exactly.
the sea snail. I know the island of Mozia, this small, small island opposite Marsala, was a center for that production with the salt gathering in the Stagnone Bay dating back to the Phoenicians as well.
Hence the blue bottle of Messiah in
Yes,
reference to
yes,
the purple people, the purple blue bottle of
yes.
Messiah Arak.
Yes, yes. Something else I'd like to touch on, and I know it's a complex subject, but it's a beautiful subject, which is Lebanese cuisine and Lebanese cuisine in relation, to the wines that you produce. I know we can't discuss this vast subject in great detail, but just give us an idea of the richness of Lebanese food and how well it goes with your wines.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, Lebanon is a melting pot of different people, influences. All the persecuted minorities in the region found a safe haven in Lebanon along the millennia, and certainly each brought in its own spices to what became Lebanese cuisine. In Lebanon, we have Kurdish influence, Turkish influence, we have Christian, Druze, Jews, you name it, everyone, Armenians. So lots of influences from all the people that now we have a lot of Syrian refugees, a lot of people from Aleppo. So Aleppo is known for its spices. And so that has brought in a very refined cuisine, the French influence between the two wars. So the cuisine in Lebanon is very much as the wine is part of our DNA. So it's the multi-layered influences have brought in the best of those crossings, I would say, to name a few dishes that are uneasy to host with full-bodied reds, and that's why our wines are more on the minerality. I'm talking about Masaya, not the wines of Lebanon in general, because every winery might differ in style, but we are more and more into the minerality, less on the fruit, less on the oak, minerality to complement these cuisines. And arak is, it's not by accident that this drink is our national drink, as you mentioned earlier, and the predominant national drink in the Levant, because it cleanses the palate between in every dish over a meze. A meze is like tapas, small plates with hummus, which is known now globally. But hummus includes lemon juice and garlic, and you have, the aubergine, which is baba ganoush or mutabbal. It has grilled aubergine. Those are very difficult plates, or let alone the tabbouleh, which is parsley, and there is a lot of coriander in our cuisine. There are a lot of acidic tastes and a variety, especially in the mezes of flavors, and the arak cleanses the palate between every little knob you grab. And then the wines go nicer, I would say, with dishes that have involved poultry or meat and fish and so forth. So it's, I wouldn't say complex, but it's complex in its taste. It's very refined cuisine, the Lebanese cuisine, and it is thanks to the crossings of the culture of people in our land. And this is the signature of our land. It's the multiculture and embracement of so many cultures over the millennia that made it so formidably complex and refined. And the wines come along those lines. Certainly, our rosé is a wine I would recommend with the cuisine of the Levant.
Okay. Now, Sami, I know we're in deeply troubled times at the moment, but Lebanon is a country I would love to visit and I look forward to visiting one day. I'd like to talk about your wine resort that you've created. You've created a beautiful place on Mount Lebanon.
Yes, at Faqra, yes, it's a small village. Kfar Debien is a village in altitude. My parents, bless them, had acquired land for us as well in that area that we developed. I was, in 2006 already traumatized the first time or a second time by an ongoing war that we're living again at the time. It was between also Hezbollah and Israel. There is a replay, unfortunately, now, 16 years later, or 18 years later, and I did not want for my children to be displaced like we were from the Beqaa. So I decided to extend into this area, which is more mountainous and more in the heart of Mount Lebanon. And we were fortunate to fall onto sublime stones with which we have built the altitude winery. And I was, of course, attracted by the cooler climate for the white wines. And it only happens that we overlook the highest altitude Roman temple in the world. It's in Faqra, just beneath in the horizon of our winery. And another coincidence, which I did not know, as I mentioned to you, I came into this almost by accident and everything grew organically. The Romans used to wait and guard Baalbek, which was their main town or main crossing region in their history. And by having this temple in Faqra, to actually signal any invading forces from the Mediterranean to Baalbek. So they would have to wait for snow melt to cross, and this is exactly what we do. We have, I would say, a temple for wine and hospitality in overlooking this Roman temple, and our vines in around Baalbek. And as the Romans did, we wait for the snow melt to cross and we wait for the snow melt to bottle, and we really work closer to nature than any other winery, I believe, because not only we work with the lunar calendar and we are, biodynamic and organic practicing since the inception of Masaya, but also this additional layer of respecting snow and waiting for the snow to melt and the particles to settle in our wines and our juices organically has brought a huge difference. And this is why you were mentioning the white that you have particularly enjoyed, because at Masaya Faqra, we wait for the snow to melt before bottling. So the wines really, no filtering, really settle naturally. And this adds a layer to the natural approach of our winemaking.
It sounds an amazing place that you're describing, a corner of paradise that you've wanted to create, and with wines that can then take that paradise around the world. Your wines are available now on global markets. Is that right? Where can our listeners find Messiah wines?
Certainly in the UK, we're very well distributed by the main merchants like Tanners and Wine Society, and you saw them at Darts Farm. We're pretty well distributed in Canada, in Quebec for sure, with the SAQ, and across the US, in the Emirates. I'm in Dubai actually. I'm flying to Dubai on Monday. We're available with MMI and in Europe, in Switzerland, in Luxembourg, in France, in quite broad markets, and in Australia.
What about Asia? We have many listeners in Asia.
We're available in Australia. I know we're in Cambodia as well, and we there are a bit in Hong Kong, Singapore, but main markets are Australia. We're quite. I might visit actually in the coming year. We are also available. I was in Mexico soon, in Latin America, but our main markets are Canada, US, UK, UAE. Asia is a bit shy, but because maybe I did not have invest enough time yet developing in Asia, the outside of Australia.
Uh-huh. Okay, well, Sami, thank you so much for sharing your story, for sharing the story of Messiah Wines, and for taking us to a historic wineland with deep roots in the very heart of Western civilization. I've really enjoyed meeting you in person last month and meeting you again here. So thank you very much for being our guest
And
today.
Mark, this is mutual. I have very much enjoyed meeting you as a person, and thank you for the opportunity. And I only wish peace prevails in our very rich part of the world for friends like you and your listeners to visit without much worries, because we are beyond all peace seekers. Remember, the Phoenicians never invaded by force of arm, they always invaded by culture and exchange and knowledge and quality produce. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sami, and I very much look forward to meeting you again and to visiting you in the Beqaa Valley. Thank you,
Thank
Sami.
you.
Have a great day.
You as well. Bye bye now.
Thank you. Bye. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Wine, Food, and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe right here or wherever you get your pods. Likewise, you can visit us at ItalianWinePodcast.com. Until next time, chin chin.